1961, the massive B-52 Stratofortress had been in the air for over 10 hours when disaster struck. A fuel leak was discovered in the right wing. The bomber was performing a covert U.S. government airborne alert mission, part of an operation of maintaining up to 12 nuclear-armed bombers airborne and ready 24/7. Because of the leak, plans to refuel the aircraft in midair were canceled. Instead, ground control directed the bomber to fly a holding pattern off the coast of North Carolina. The plan was to fly until the aircraft had burned enough fuel to make a safe landing. But the leak kept growing and growing. The pilot realized that in 3 minutes the bomber had lost 37,000 pounds of fuel. Red alert! Ground control immediately ordered the bomber to return and land at Seymour Johnson Air Force Base. Approaching the airfield, the bomber began to descend in preparation to land, but it was too late. At 10,000 feet, the bomber began shaking uncontrollably. The pilot ordered the crew to bail out. They did, abandoning in midair their payload of two 3 to 4 megaton Mark 39 thermonuclear bombs. Somewhere around 8,000 feet in altitude, the bomber caught fire, and there was an explosion. The spiraling aircraft broke up between 1,000 and 2,000 feet over the farming community of Faro, about 12 miles from Goldsboro, North Carolina. The two Mk-39 bombs were sent free-falling to the ground. Each Mk-39 is cylindrical, measuring just under 12 feet in length, and weighing between 9,000 and 10,000 pounds. They're built to lay waste to a wide area. Individually, the bombs have an explosive power bigger than 3 million tons of TNT. Sadly, 3 crew members perished in the plane crash. The other 5 crew members were able to parachute and land safely. The parachute of one of the bombs deployed, and it slowly floated down. The parachute canopy tangled in a tree, and the bomb landed erect, embedding its nose 18 inches into the ground. It received little impact damage. The other bomb plunged to hit the ground at around 700 miles per hour and broke apart, burying itself deep into the muddy soil of Nahunta Swamp, creating an 8-foot wide, 6-foot deep crater. For all the horror of the accident, it could have been much worse. Though the U.S. downplayed the incident at the time, many years later, declassified papers revealed the truth. Each of the M39 bombs were equipped with 4 interlocking safety mechanisms, all of which had to be triggered to explode the bomb. On the bomb that landed intact, 3 of the safety mechanisms had been activated during the fall. Only a single switch prevented the bomb from detonating. While critics have since debated exactly how close the U.S. Air Force came to nuking North Carolina, it was fairly close. For weeks after the accident, a recovery team from the Army Corps of Engineers excavated the swampland, trying to retrieve all pieces of the second bomb. They were able to recover the parachute pack, some high explosives, a tritium bottle, and a portion of the nose. After digging some 40 feet, they were forced to declare defeat in retrieving the other pieces. Their excavating equipment kept getting stuck in the mud, and the hole kept filling with water. The thermonuclear secondary component of the bomb, which contained plutonium, uranium, and lithium salt, was left where it lay, about 180 feet underground. Unlike other nuclear disasters, no concrete barrier was poured to encase the bomb. The U.S. government purchased a permanent easement from the David family, who owned the land, for $1,000. A few years later, Congress voted to give the Davids family an undisclosed additional settlement. Today, the North Carolina Division of Radiation Protection periodically tests the groundwater near the crash site. As of yet, no detectable radiation has been found in the area, but the radioactive elements in the bomb have extremely long half-lives. So, if one or both of the bombs had detonated, what would have happened? Researchers say the yield of each bomb was more than 250 times the destructive power of the Hiroshima bomb, large enough to create a 100% kill zone with a radius of 8.5 miles. The North Carolinian countryside would have been covered in clouds of radiation, poisoning fields and the water supply for many years to come. Long after the initial explosion, sickness and thousands of deaths would have followed from exposure to radiation. Most worrying would have been the potential U.S. response to the explosion. If the government had quickly assumed that the bomber was sabotaged, hijacked, or shot down, the U.S. military could have retaliated, leading to a nuclear-driven World War III. Believe it or not, the Goldsboro incident is not the only time the USA has come close to accidentally nuking itself or another country. The Department of Defense has officially admitted that between 1950 and now, 32 broken arrow incidents, with 6 nuclear weapons lost and never recovered, have occurred. Some researchers claimed that the U.S. official incident count is low, and several hundred, if not over 1,000 of accidents with nuclear weapons have occurred. On the other hand, a really high estimate of broken arrow is also questionable, as some researchers have included minor events where the weapon was not impacted at all, such as a truck having a fender bender while transporting the device in their counts. A true number of broken arrow incidents is probably somewhere in the middle of the official count and the purported count. Here are a few of the other times the US has had a serious broken arrow mishap. On July 27, 1956, after a training mission, a B-47 bomber made a difficult landing at Lakenheath Royal Air Force Station in Suffolk, England. The plane skidded out of control and slid off the runway, hitting a nuclear weapons storage facility containing 3 Mark VI nuclear bombs. The crew was killed and all 3 bombs were damaged. One even had its detonator severed from the violent impact. The bombs had to be shipped back to the US to be fixed. Investigators thought that it was a miracle the bombs didn't explode. On May 22, 1957, a B-36 bomber was transporting a Mark 17 nuclear bomb to Kirtland Air Force Base when suddenly the bomb fell through the bomb bay doors. Apparently, a safety release mechanism had been moved to the wrong position. The bomb free fell 1,700 feet and exploded as it crashed into a field near Albuquerque, New Mexico. The bomb's high explosives detonated, creating a huge crater 12 feet deep and 25 feet wide. However, thankfully, the nuclear capsule didn't detonate and was found intact. The only casualty was a cow who'd been grazing nearby. This particular bomb was estimated to have been the most powerful bomb the US ever made, at 10 megatons. If the nuclear capsule had detonated, the bomb would have had an explosive force about 625 times that of the Hiroshima bomb. Some radioactive contamination happened at the crash site. On July 29, 1957, an Air Force C-124 cargo plane carrying 3 Mark V nuclear bombs and also a nuclear core took off from Delaware, planning to fly to Europe. The plane experienced mechanical difficulties and was forced to drop 2 of the Mark V nuclear bombs in the Atlantic Ocean near Atlantic City, New Jersey. One bomb was dumped 50 miles from the coast and the other 75 miles. While the removable plutonium capsules that give the bombs their nuclear punch weren't installed, each bomb carried a ton of high explosives. Thankfully, the bombs didn't explode. While the military searched for the bombs, they weren't found. As far as it's publicly known, the bombs are still somewhere out there, being corroded by salt water and possibly leaking into the ocean. On February 5, 1957, the Air Force was holding a series of training exercises off of Tybee Island near Savannah, Georgia. During a simulated combat mission, a B-47 bomber carrying a 12-foot-long, 7,600-pound Mark 15 bomb collided mid-air at 39,000 feet with an F-86 fighter plane. The F-86 crashed, but the pilot was able to safely eject. The bomber had severe damage and attempted to land at Hunter Air Force Base with the weapon on board, but wasn't able to. Fearing possible detonation in the event of a crash, the aircrew jettisoned the bomb at 7,200 feet. They were able to later land safely. Though the armed forces spent weeks searching for the bomb, even using divers and sonar, they were unable to find it. The bomb remains buried in the silt at the bottom of the Wassaw Sound. The Air Force maintains that while the bomb could have had a large conventional explosion from the 400 pounds of high explosives it carried, it didn't have a nuclear capsule installed and therefore wouldn't cause a
This isn't our first flip. And sure, some renovations can require a bit of compromise. But there's no settling here.
nuclear explosion. However, while testifying to Congress, the Assistant Secretary from the Department of Defense claimed that the bomb was complete with the nuclear capsule installed. In either case, the bomb had weapons-grade uranium, and if it had exploded, radioactive material would have been forcefully spread. If the explosion was nuclear, the radioactive fallout would have been bigger. Since the accident, the area has been monitored for radioactivity. While higher than normal levels of radioactivity have been found in the area, further testing determined that monazite, a harmless mineral in the sand, is actually naturally radioactive. On December 5, 1965, the aircraft carrier the USS Ticonderoga was traveling about 70 miles off the coast of Okinawa, Japan. During a training exercise, an A-4E Skyhawk loaded with a 1 megaton B-43 nuclear bomb rolled off the deck. The aircraft, pilot, and live bomb were lost in 16,200 feet of ocean. Though ships searched for hours after the incident, no trace of the pilot or plane was ever found. The incident was kept secret until 1981, when the Navy released a brief statement saying that the plane was carrying a nuclear bomb, but the accident occurred 500 miles from land. It wasn't until '89 that the truth was revealed. The Japanese were outraged to find that a bomb with a yield 70 times greater than the bomb dropped in Hiroshima was lost so close to shore. Furthermore, Japanese law bans ships carrying nuclear weapons from sailing in its territorial waters or calling on its ports, and the US clearly violated that policy, although they've never admitted to having done so. On January 21, 1968, a B-52 was en route from Plattsburgh Air Force Base, New York, to Thule Air Force Base in Greenland, when a fire broke out in the navigator's compartment. The plane ended up crashing on sea ice in North Star Bay about 7 miles southeast of the base. 6 of the 7 crew members were able to eject and survived the crash. The high explosives on the bomber detonated upon impact. While the 4 B-28Fi thermonuclear bombs on board didn't explode, they ruptured and dispersed radioactive material, which resulted in contamination. The US and Denmark immediately launched Project Crested Ice, an intensive cleanup and environmental restoration operation. Over 4 months, workers battled Greenland's harsh winter weather to remove approximately 273,000 cubic feet of contaminated ice, snow, water, and debris. The contaminated material was transported for burial at nuclear dumps in the US. Beginning in 1957, about 10 years after this accident, Denmark had instituted a nuclear-free zone policy. The Danish public protested over what they saw was a violation of their country. The Danish and American governments claimed the bomber was not on a routine mission and that it had diverted to Greenland because of a one-time emergency. At the time, the Thule accident was the latest in a string of several aircraft accidents involving nuclear weapons. In order to mollify international outrage, Operation Chrome Dome, an airborne alert program, was ended, and the U.S. Secretary of Defense decided that U.S. aircraft would only fly with live nuclear weapons aboard during a crisis. In the 1990s, declassified papers showed that the U.S. regularly flew nuclear-armed flights over Greenland and that the Danish Prime Minister at the time had implicitly allowed it. Also, later declassified documents suggested that during the Thule incident, the secondary stage of one of the bombs sank to the seabed and couldn't be retrieved. Both revelations caused widespread protests in Denmark. In the 2000s, workers involved in the cleanup operation sought and were granted compensation from the U.S. government for radiation-related illnesses. These Broken Arrow incidents are just the tip of the iceberg. However, it's not just the U.S. Russia and a few other countries have experienced and often hushed up or downplayed nuclear weapons accidents too. In most cases, the accidents caused the militaries or countries involved to improve upon the rules for handling nuclear devices.